Hello flute players! I would like to review some of the things we've been learning in our very first music lesson this week. There's a lot to cover in our first few lessons, so I just wanted to make sure that you have everything down. This video might help answer questions you have, as well as get you on track if something was a little fuzzy or confusing during our first music lesson. We're going to start with the very beginning of opening up your instrument case. When you open up your case, usually there's a label or company name that sits on top. That will tell you which side is the top and which side is the bottom. You don't want to open your instrument upside down because that could cause the flute to tumble out. You'll also notice that you'll have your case right side up when these clips clip from down and you lift them up to unclip them. So if I set my case down with the label on top, I lift my clips up, I can see each piece of my flute in its little cradle. Opening it upside down does not give the flute those cradles to rest inside. Let's talk about the parts of the flute. There are three main parts of your instrument. The first is the head joint. You'll notice that the head joint does not have any buttons on it. This is where you blow into to create a sound on your instrument. The second piece is the body of the instrument. And this is the long piece with all of the buttons. Most of the buttons are on this side of the flute, whereas this side does not have as many buttons. That'll be important a little bit later. The third piece of the flute is the foot joint or tail joint. And this is a smaller piece which has a couple buttons on it. Let's practice assembling our flute. We're going to start with the headpiece and the body. When assembling the headpiece and the body, you want to be careful that when you pick up your flute, you don't grab onto these buttons very tightly because they could easily bend or break. So when I pick up my flute, I'm going to be careful to hold it from the bottom or from this part over here that doesn't have any buttons attached to it. Speaking of that side with no buttons, that is where my head joint is going to attach to. I can hold each piece in one hand carefully. And instead of just pushing this piece in, the best technique is to give it a little bit of a twist or wiggle. So I'm just going to wiggle this piece to settle it in all the way down, and that'll help it settle the best. The next piece that we're going to attach is the end piece. And we're going to use this same wiggling approach. Remember, we want to be careful not to grip the flute too tightly because that could bend or damage some of the keys. So I'm going to grip this side tightly to the spot with no keys or buttons on it. Same thing with the end piece. I'm going to hold it tightly from the end with no buttons, and that'll tell me that I can put these two pieces together by wiggling it back and forth until they don't move any further. If I try to put this piece in the other direction, it's not going to fit on the instrument. So it's an easy way to know exactly how to assemble it. And I'm going to wiggle it on until it stops. You might think your flute is finished, but we have to align each of these pieces so that it's correctly able to play. Let's start with the head joint. You'll notice on my flute and most flutes, there's a little engraving here with the company name on the spot with no buttons. What I want to do is I want to twist the head joint over so that the hole that I blow into lines up pretty well with that engraving. There also might be another company engraving on the head joint itself, and that's another indicator that your flute is lined up. So I'm just going to double check. I've got the part where I blow into lined right up with that front engraving. My head joint is ready to go. Let's check out the tail piece. You might think that it makes sense to line up the long tube here or pipe so that the buttons line up. But believe it or not, with our tailpiece, we don't want the buttons to line up. We want this button right here to line up with the tube. So I'm going to twist this until each of the tubes or pipes are halfway through each button. So I can almost draw a line with these buttons, and then I should align right with my tube piece here. Same thing if I twist my flute and look at this long pipe right here. This long pipe goes halfway through those buttons. Take a closer look and make sure that your flute aligns with mine. Again, the tailpiece pipe right here goes about halfway through where these keys line up. My flute is ready to play. Let's talk about how to blow into our instrument. To form your mouth correctly to play the flute is called forming an embouchure. Embouchure is just a fancy word for blowing it, how you blow into your instrument. To form the correct flute embouchure, you want to make an M shape with your mouth, a flat line. M. Don't roll your lips in, but just relax, almost like you're going to fall asleep on your pillow. M. The second step is to pull the corners of your mouth tight to form a nice thin line with your mouth. M. M. When you blow into your flute, you keep those corners tight and you push air straight through the middle of your lips. And you use the syllable for the letter P. Notice I'm keeping my mouth and lips close together. I'm not opening my mouth very far. You just want to keep your lips tight and just push air straight out the center of your lips. To hold your flute correctly, you hold your flute out to your right side. Your left hand comes up toward the top by your mouthpiece side, and your left hand faces towards you. So if I was going to wave, I would be waving toward myself with my left hand. Then I can hold the flute. We'll talk about where to put your hand in a minute. My right hand, however, does not face toward me like this. In order to get my right hand lined up, go ahead and wave at the camera. Hello. Now take that hand as you're waving and just place it over the flute. That way, I've got my left hand waving toward me and my right hand waves away. If your hand is backward, you're not going to line up with the keys and it's going to feel weird. So make sure your left hand waves toward you. Hello, left hand. And your right hand waves toward me at the video. We have 6 home keys to play the flute, 3 with our left hand and 3 with our right hand at the bottom of the instrument. Let's talk about the home keys for our left hand. We always use our first 3 fingers in our hand for the home keys. Our pointer finger, our middle finger, and your ring finger. Those are the ones that are going to find my home keys. When I put my hand up to the flute, you'll notice that there's this little key right here. You can skip that key. We never press him down with our finger. There is a flat key right here. And that flat key is where you place your first finger of your left hand. So again, I skip this little guy and I put my first finger on the flat key. My second finger skips the next one and reaches all the way down. So I have my first finger on the flat key. I have one in the middle, and then I have my second finger. My third finger then can press the one right there next to this hockey stick shaped key. And those are my top 3 home keys. My first finger on the flat key, skip one, reach for your second finger, and then place your third finger down. The home keys for the right hand are even easier. If I look at the tailpiece, I can see that I've got these keys lined right up in a row. So I'm going to take my 3 fingers and just place them on those 3 keys. These are also the keys that have these little buttons in the middle. That's how you know if your fingers are lined up correctly. I've got these 2 little buttons in the middle, and I've got my 3 fingers on those home keys for my right hand. For the time being, your pinky can just kind of hang out. He doesn't have to press down any of these pinky buttons yet. Same thing with your right hand pinky. We don't have to press down any of these buttons yet. These are our 6 home keys. We have our first finger on the flat key in the right hand. Your second finger reaches down past the one in the middle, and then your third finger rests there. Then in our right hand, notice I'm not putting any of my right hand fingers on the tail joint or the tail piece. Each of those are on the body of the instrument. All three right there. The last thing I want to show you before we start playing a sound on our flute is where your thumb goes. I'll try and turn around here so you can see. Where my left hand is, there's nothing for my thumb to do but rest on its side. Where my left hand is, I have two possible places, two possible buttons to press with my thumb. I'm going to go ahead and press my thumb on this longer button right below it, that hockey stick shaped looking one. I can rest my thumb right on that lower large button. After you rest your thumb on that lower large button, double check that your fingers are still in our home key position. 1, 2, 3 on top. 1, 2, 3 on the bottom. Remember what we talked about for forming our embouchure? Our embouchure is how we form our mouth to play the flute. When I form a good embouchure, I say the word M and tighten the corners of my lips. Then I push air through the middle of the lips like the letter P. When I put my flute up to my mouth, I want to tuck the top of the head joint just below my lip. I don't put the hole right on top of my mouth, but I roll the flute forward so that the hole is facing straight up and right in the middle of my lips. This way, when I blow, I'm blowing straight across the top of the hole, not right into the hole in front of my mouth, but just below my lip. If I show you this way, there's the hole. I should be blowing the air perpendicular or straight across the top of that hole. Remember, tight corners and a soft letter P sound. Let's see how it sounds. Right below my lip. I'm getting a whistling sound because I'm blowing directly over that hole. If I'm not right on the hole, I may need to adjust my flute by rolling the hole forward or rolling the whole flute back toward me. If I keep blowing into it, making those little rolling adjustments back or forth, you should be able to find that sweet spot where your flute will whistle. Think about like when you can blow into a bottle, an empty bottle, to make it whistle. That's exactly what we're looking for in our flute. If I don't have that hole lined up correctly, I'm just going to get an airy sound, which doesn't sound like a note, like this. Or if I have it rolled out, it almost sounds hollow or empty. But once I get that sweet spot right under my lip and blow across the air hole, that's what makes my flute sound with a good tone. It'll take some practice to get your flute to have a good tone like that. It takes a lot of lung support and air. So make sure when you're sitting up nice and tall and not slouching sitting on the couch. You want to make sure your lungs can fill up like a big balloon before blowing into your instrument. Let's take a look at our first music note, D. Our first music note, D, has this picture below it. If you look on page 5 of your lesson book, song number 2, you will see this same diagram. Go ahead and find page 5, song number 2. Looking at this diagram, I can see that I've got some holes open and some holes filled in. Any hole that's filled in is a finger that I'm pressing down. Any hole that's open is where I have to lift my finger off the note to play it. So let's try playing our first note, D, using the fingering chart I have here, or that's in your book on song number 2 on page 5. If I'm going to follow this finger chart, I've got my left hand home keys here. The first note is open, not pressed because it's not filled in. My second 2 notes are filled in, so I press those home keys. So on my hand closer to my mouth when I'm holding my flute, that's my left hand. I need to lift my first finger while still pressing the other 2 home keys. And I'm still pressing the long key in the back on my thumb. Let's look at our right hand position. On the right side of this line, it's our right hand home keys, and all 3 are filled in. That means all 3 are pressed. When I press this combination of fingers and blow into my flute, I will create the note D, as in song number 2 in your book. Your D note should sound like this. Let's go ahead and play song number 2 in your music book. Song number 2 uses this open circle note. That's called a whole note, and it's worth 4 beats. I'm going to tap my foot while we play so that we can hear each beat. If I need to hold each note for 4 beats, then I need to hold my note for 4 taps of my foot. You can go ahead and tap your foot along with me while we play. If that's too hard right now, then just focus on playing the note. Here we go. Song number 2. 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3, go. And that's it. In our song, between the whole notes, you'll notice there's a little box. And I didn't play any notes when there was that box in our music. That box is called a whole rest. Just like our whole note is where we play for 4 beats, that box, or a whole rest, is where we rest and do not play for 4 beats. Let's look at song number 3 in our book. Song number 3 introduces our new note C. Let's finger our new note C. Find your home keys with both your right hand and your left hand. Let's look at our chord diagram to see which notes or which keys we have to press down. The left side of this line shows us our left hand home keys. And look, there's only one left hand note that we need to press. The only key we press with our left hand is our first finger. So I'm going to lift my second 2 fingers in my left hand, and I'm going to lift my thumb. My thumb does not need to be pressed. Now you might think, Mr. Bennett, if I'm only pressing 1 finger down, how am I supposed to balance the flute? Well, this is going to take a little bit of practice, but you can rest it right on your first finger like I am. I've got my hand almost in the shape of a C, and when I press my first finger, I'm going to rest the flute right on that part of my finger. So even though my thumb is not pressing down, my other fingers are not pressing down, I've still got my first finger holding up the flute. That will take a little bit of practice. So if it feels a little uncomfortable right now, that's normal. Everyone experiences that. Let's look at the right hand of my flute. On the right side of this line, it shows my 3 right hand home keys, and they are all open. That means I do not press any of my right hand fingers. However, we do have this new teardrop shaped key. The shape of this key that's filled in is the exact shape of our pinky key right here where my pinky is on the flute. It's the same sort of half circle or teardrop shape. This one right there. That means I need to use my pinky to press that down and lift those other three fingers. So I'm propping up my right hand here, my right hand. I'm pressing the key with my pinky, and I'm using my thumb to prop up the flute. So in my left hand, I've got my thumb and my pinky. In my right hand, I'm just pressing my first finger, and I'm using the pad of my first finger to hold up the flute. This note can be a little tricky as well to hold the flute because we're not really pressing, we're only pressing 2 buttons. Let's see what it sounds like. Try playing that C note into your flute so that it matches mine. Remember, take a big breath, fill up your lungs, and blow across the top of the hole. It's okay if it takes a little bit of time to get used to playing that note in the flute. If you're ready and you can make that good tone in your flute, let's play song number 3 in our music book. Song number 3 has whole notes and whole rests. When we see a whole note like this, we hold it for 4 beats. When we see a whole rest, which is the box, we hold that, we do not play for 4 beats. Here's song number 3. 1, 2, ready, play. Rest, 2, breathe, and 1, 2, 3, breathe. Nice job, you guys. I'm going to keep playing through these songs. If you found it challenging to play song number 2 and 3, why don't you go back and keep practicing those over the next few days? If you're ready to keep going to song number 4 and 5, then you can keep watching this video with me. Here's song number 4, 2-note tango. In order to play 2-note tango, we need to practice going from our D music note to C. That can be tricky as well. Try it with me. Hold your fingers down for our D music note, which looks like this. And then we have our C music note, which is below. I'll clip D right up here so we can see. So we're going to start up here on our D music note, and then we're going to switch fingers to play C. Form your D music note. Let's hold out D. Now find your fingers for C. Back to D. Back to C. Wow, this is challenging. It's okay if you're having a little bit of trouble doing this. This is going to take some practice to get to go back and forth between those 2 notes. Here's song number 4. 1, 2, ready, play. Rest, 2, 3, 4. Rest, 2, 3, 4. Rest, 2, 3, back to C. Rest, 2, 3, back to D. And that's it. Let's take a look at song number 5. It's okay if you're not ready to go on to song number 5. If you're not, end the video and go back and practice just those few songs. If you think you're ready to learn our 3rd note, stay on. Our 3rd note is B flat, as shown in song number 5. Let's look at how to finger our B flat note. The circles on the left side of the line show our left hand fingerings. The first one is filled in, so I need to press my first finger down in my right hand. Then my thumb key is pressed, so I get to press the thumb key, the large flat thumb key on the back of the flute. With those two notes pressed, I'm ready to move to the right hand. On the right side of this line, I've got my first finger filled in and my pinky note filled in. So I press my first finger and my pinky on that teardrop shaped pinky key, or the half circle pinky key. Once I have those 4 buttons pressed, 2 in the left hand, 2 in the right hand, I'm ready to play B flat. Let's try song number 5. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, ready, go. 1, 2, ready, go. And that's it. Our first 3 notes are D, C, and B. Thank you guys for following along this week. Don't forget, when we practice, you log into your Google Classroom and open up our practice checklist. That walks you through the steps of setting up your instrument, warming up by seeing how long you can hold a steady note into your flute, and then working at the first couple songs of our music book, which this week is song number 2. And then if you have any extra time, you can look at 3, 4, or 5. If you need anything, you can always send me an email, and I would be happy to set up a Zoom meeting or send you an email in response. Have a good week, flute players. Happy practicing!